Hello there, YouTubers. Today I'd like to address some of the misguided ways in which our society inhibits spiritual growth through emotional inversions. I know there are quite a few resources talking about this sort of thing, but until it's culturally fixed, more communication can't hurt. So, most social emotional inversions take place on a subconscious level, which is frequently subliminally manipulated by a variety of things, including headlines and the way actors respond to fake situations, things like that. However, as I've mentioned in the past, it is imperative and able to achieve true self-awareness that we consciously and actively observe where our reactions and impulses are coming from, so that we can determine whether or not they are built on solid foundations. So this will kind of be an example of that process, though I'll be speaking more generally than specifically, even though the self-analytical process is often more beneficial when confronting specific situations. Anyhow, regarding sadness. Now, clearly there are a lot of inversions within our society in regards to the way that we handle and process pain, particularly in regards to the male half of the population, which ties into the artificial constructs of toxic gender roles, which I've talked about before, but I won't get into that right now. I'll just mention briefly, positive and negative characteristics do not shift based on gender. Noble character traits and shameful character traits are the same for all people. Anyways, back to the point. So the first inversion in regards to sadness, which I will confront, is the false notion that sadness is weakness. This is often accompanied by the false judgment that the expression of sadness is about attention, which is also built on the false assumption that people should navigate their pain alone and should not receive support from others. So that's several misconceptions in rapid succession. Working backwards, people should want to support one another when they're in pain, rather than condemn one another, for one. For two, it is terribly self-centered and small-minded to think that other people's pain is an inconvenience to you. And finally, sadness itself is not weakness, it is actually strength. It takes a lot of energy to directly confront pain. It's a blessing to feel pain. It's a blessing to feel pain about things that are wrong. Well, it's a destructive weakness to numb ourselves to experiences which should be truly painful. People very often behave as if numbness is an ideal place from which to persecute those who express feeling. This is energetically vampiric and is in fact due to weak-willed insecurity on behalf of the numb individuals who lack a basic fundamental empathy for others, which is a major malfunction in this world that we live in. We should all want to support and love one another, and that should just go without saying. Anyways, moving on, there are of course many kinds of sadness, and there are healthy and unhealthy ways to process each individual variety. In fact, it's a little bit dangerous for me to make any generalizations without defining what I'm talking about, so I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into a couple of different varieties of sadness. For starters, there's a difference between being sad about something that is worth being sad about and being consumed by despair. There's also a difference between both of those and experiencing despondent depression. I'll focus on those three ideas for the moment. It is a gift and it is beautiful to feel and work through a pure sort of pain, and also to be able to share the pain of those who endure true hardships. Now, what I mean by pure pain is pain that is proper for us to feel. We should feel pain when, say, loved ones pass away, or when tragedies occur around the world, or when there is clear injustice. We should not be numb to these things. However, experiencing this pure pain should give us a foundation of resolve to move forward in some way once we have worked through it. It should not consume us or leave us despondent. If this sort of pain leaves us in a state of despair or giving up, then we have not processed it in a healthy way. The point of pain is to improve us based on having experienced it, to give us tools to move forward and help ourselves and others. If we find ourselves overwhelmed, this is unhealthy, and we must make efforts to give ourselves the proper space to heal. Now, the other thing I mentioned and we'll touch on briefly is depression, which is completely different from a healthy experience of sadness and needs to be processed and dealt with in a completely different way. While working through a healthy sadness can be a foundation for growth and healing, maneuvering through depression is more like being woken up 2 hours after falling asleep and asked to fight a champion athlete. Frankly, depression should almost never be handled alone and should ideally be the responsibility of a social support structure to help out with, which is another major flaw in how society deals with these things. There should be a general social safety network of simply healing-minded communities and individuals who regularly convene and help, who regularly convene with one another and speak with those who are in need of help. This is a very different idea from a psychologist or a psychiatrist who are frequently arrogant, lying actors who are primarily interested in the money. They are often just charging people for the privilege of fake friendship. Meanwhile, if people were taught how to simply support and help one another, we wouldn't even really need those jobs in society. Culturally, we often just shove pills into depressed people to make them numb, which is obviously extremely toxic, inverted, and unhealthy, and disregards the root of the problem. This is trying to treat the symptom while ignoring the root cause, but really it's not even treating the symptom because it's just numbing people into ignoring their own trauma. If we simply had the strength to stand with one another when we were in pain, instead of fleeing from and ignoring other people's pains, or even worse, condemning them, then we could fundamentally eliminate the blight of big pharma, which is an extremely corrupt and despicable industry. All it takes is the simple idea of wanting to support and uplift one another, which should be what we all want to do in the first place. In any case, one more time for the people in the back. It requires righteous strength to empathize with those who are in pain, to reach out your hand and touch them and say, "I am with you." And though there are countless thoughtless people who may think less of one who would do such a thing, because culture has been misled, their opinions do not matter. Anyhow, I know that I've kind of jumped around a bit between topics, but I wanted to touch on all those fairly major points which are frequently twisted in people's subconscious minds, and I wanted to do it somewhat efficiently, even though an entire book could be written to elaborate about how inverted society is in each of those contexts. Better sometimes, perhaps, to keep things short and allow people the opportunity to fill in a few of their own blanks. I guess I'll close this video with a vow and then a poem. Anywhere that there is pain and sadness, I am with those who suffer. As a component of all that is, there is no agony nor hardship which is separate from what I am. With love as my cornerstone, I support and bless all who endure unjust tribulations in these cruel and desensitized times. May all that I have endured in this world serve as a foundation from which I may work to protect and magnify those who yet suffer, for their understanding of and desire to fix the vast depravity of the sick sociopaths who persecute and mislead the innocent in this world. Amen. And now the poem. We could be greeting one another with poems and dances. We needn't be bound within our homes and trances. We can share this bountiful land, harvest and plant seeds, reappropriate our minds to prioritize need over greed. Let not false social constructs keep us locked in bondage, echo chamber expectations holding the entire world hostage. Headline after headline deftly designed with timely rhyme, keep us bickering over nothing as they lead lives of legal crime. Hypnotic programmed programmers tell your vision what it's missing. Yet all these simple liars have naught but a mission of division. Be not tainted by the machinations of twisted, sinister snakes. Remember what you are, what's in your soul, and what's at stake.